Today, we're going to hear the story of Riley Pototschnik. He is down in Texas, and he is the son of Jonathan Pototschnik, who we've had on the program many a time. So welcome to the Green Industry Podcast, Riley.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, sir. Now, I've been to your house before. I think you're in the room that we almost did our podcast in right now, correct?
Yeah, you guys were about to kick me out of here. I was going to have to leave my office, but it sure would have made for a good background. Although the video that you guys did, I think the backyard came out pretty good for your video.
Well, until it got dark, we started recording. I'm thinking, isn't it going to get dark soon? And then, lo and behold, we were out there. It's pitch black, so that didn't quite work well on video. But
suddenly, it's an audio only podcast.
Yeah, it was an audio only podcast after it was dark. But you guys got a beautiful backyard. Your dad showed us the office. He's like, we could record in here. We could record in my son's room, or we're outside. We're like, what's wrong with out here? So apparently it getting dark was what's wrong, but your backyard's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's nothing to complain about. When the weather's perfect like this right now, it's 60s. I will go sit out in the backyard and get some work done. I mean, there's no better spot than just working out there. Although, aside from the mosquitoes kind of ruin that whole workspace for most of the year.
Okay. Yeah. I got bit by a couple of mosquitoes while I was out there, but we're having a wonderful time. But before we get into your business, what you got going on now, what's it like being a son of a serial entrepreneur? I mean, your dad's been on our show 5 or 6 times. He's told us about all his businesses, the failed ones, the successful ones. What's it like growing up in a household where your dad is eating and sleeping business?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think it's a really boring answer. It's, he being my dad, it doesn't feel any different. I will say it is incredibly helpful to have him around the house when I need help. So if I'm working on something, if I'm thinking about, every chat and figuring out like, okay, what's that next feature that comes to the product? I have a pretty good person to talk to kind of get some insight there. But unfortunately, I don't walk around the house thinking, oh man, I live in the same house as Lawn Care Millionaire. He's just dad, I suppose. So nothing super exciting other than, a pretty good source of feedback when I need something.
Mm-hmm. Now you are into the skiing and snowboarding and stuff like that, or that's the other brother?
Oh, it's both of us. We both love getting Colorado's probably the spot that we get to the most. But 2 years ago, we made it up to Utah for a trip. That trip was fantastic just because of how much powder they have. But my mom less so, but my dad, me, and my brother, we all love snowboarding. We'll try and get up there every spring break. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened lately. I have a trip planned in January or late January, but that's other than racing, that's like my favorite pastime.
Okay. Now that race car thing that I saw, that was in your room or was that in another room? I remember your dad showing us this like simulator race car thing. It's like, we never use it. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, that thing looks pretty cool. I wanted to use it, but he didn't offer. So I didn't get to ride, but what's that thing all about?
That thing is, well, the intention when we got it was going to be practice, because what these simulators are really good at, kind of hence the name, is simulating real life racing. So rather than taking your car out every weekend and potentially breaking something, or if you're doing wheel to wheel stuff, actually crashing into somebody as you're practicing, or you break something on the car, rather than doing that, you just hop on the simulator here and do wheel-to-wheel racing and kind of race many of the tracks and cars that we might be racing on. The problem is that as things have gotten busier and, my dad's experience has been less than positive on the simulator just because he feels like he thinks it's too much of a game. He doesn't take it too seriously. So he'll ultimately go spin off the track or take somebody out. But in general, as we all get busier, we use it less and less. So that thing is just primarily for practice, but here lately it's been primarily collecting dust. So it would have been sitting in the background if you guys were up here doing the podcast in this room. It would have been off to your right, kind of thinking about the angle that your camera might be at. But it's a ton of fun when you're using it. At least from my perspective, you feel like you're in the car and you can get some pretty good experience in learning how to race with somebody and get a good feeling on tracks around the US.
we'll get into your business here momentarily. And I look forward to you sharing about your business, but I'm really intrigued of what, as a young kid, when your dad's got service autopilot going, he's got city turf going, like walk us through what year you were born, what year all that stuff started popping off, and just kind of give us some behind the scenes of your childhood and your teenage years when your dad's businesses were in the peak there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I was born in '01. I'm 23 now. And, it's tough to remember exactly what was going on back then, but I definitely remember some instances where, while he was building city turf, and then while service autopilot was being built, it was just, we live in a nice place now, but for much of my life, it was all around saving the money to put back into the business. He was up till I mean, probably 3 or 4 in the morning every night. So, we would hang out. Like, he wasn't totally gone, but he was also like very busy and focused on the business, rightfully so. And nowadays, that's kind of where I spend my time as well. I don't get to go hang out with friends every night or every weekend. It's mostly consumed by the business, by the things that I'm doing. So I'm starting to experience a small amount of what he was doing, although I've still got a little bit of time till I reach that point of where he was at. But if I remember back then, I just remember every once in a while hearing a conversation of, we got to save a little bit more money, or maybe I can't go out and do this thing at night, or go out to dinner, because everything was being funneled back into the business, all the time, all the money. And so, as I was growing up, the businesses started growing as well, becoming a little bit less, the business became a little bit less dependent on him being involved 24/7, because more people came on, more people could handle some of the tasks and things around around city turf and service autopilot. At one point, his attention shifted from city turf fully to service autopilot, because he had people who could run that company. So, that's where he spent most of his time. So, that kind of led up to when I was in high school, before I went homeschooled. I went and did a shadow day with him up there, and actually got a good feeling about how service autopilot actually operated. Saw the development team, the customer service team. I was part of some meetings. I think the meetings that I was part of were Scrum meetings. So getting together in the morning, planning out what all the teams needed to get done, creating the game plan, and then it was basically a break. And then everybody went and did the thing that they needed to do after that Scrum meeting. It's like creating an idea of, like, what do we need to accomplish today to make today successful? So I did a shadow day and got that experience, working with a bunch of different departments to see how did things operate, and how do all the elements of these companies kind of intermingle. And around that time is when I started to find interest in software. So, I mean, kind of growing up, he never pushed me in any direction to go, hey, go try this, go try this. So, yeah, like, technology just kind of fell in my lap. And but I certainly did have a really good person to talk to. I couldn't have asked for a better person to talk to from a business standpoint, because I started detailing cars. He could help me from the service business side. And then once I transitioned to technology, he could help me there as well. So I think the biggest point is just like having that person in the house where I can always get feedback and ideas, and he can kind of tell me what he learned throughout the process of building his businesses, both City Turf and Service Autopilot.
You mentioned transitioning from school to a homeschooling. What year was that, and what was your experience being homeschooled? Did Tiffany did that, or you went to like a group, or how did that work?
Yeah, so that was right after my freshman year of school, so of high school. So up until that point, it was never a consideration. I did public school all the way through, and that was going to be the plan until this can get into a longer story. But we went and snowboarded in Colorado one year, and this year was or that year we were going to Vail for a short trip. And flying into Vail, that's where I saw all the really cool homes on the mountain. And I saw that we were going during summer, so there were some cool cars driving around too. And I had never really had any interest in business and making money. It was like soccer. I want to go professional soccer. I want to hang out with friends. Like that was the priority. But once we were flying in, and I saw all these cool homes on the mountain. I mean, you can ask them a switch flipped, and from that point on, they say that I was quiet in the car ride all the way to our hotel, thinking about like, how do I make money? And that was the conversation throughout the trip. So once we got back home, around that time, that's when I did the shadow day at Service Autopilot to see how things were going, or to see how things worked. And that's when I found software. That's where I found technology and kind of what I wanted to do over the long term. So because I found that thing, and I was basically spending I would get home from school at 3:30 or 4. I would get on my computer and I would just code the rest of the night.
Wow.
Until I had to get up, not until I had to get up in the morning but basically until I went to bed that night. So I would go to bed at like 1, after coding all afternoon. And that just went on long enough to where, and keep in mind, I was never thinking about homeschool myself. One night after school, I was coding up in the office of our previous house, and my dad walks into that room and says, "What do you think about going homeschool?" So this was never a discussion. That was the first time I had heard about it. And, I had never thought about it. And from what I also hear, my dad had to do some convincing to my mom to actually make this actually potentially happen, because, my dad went up the traditional route. My mom went up the traditional route, but she was a little bit more set in, this is how things need to be done. So before my dad came up and talked to me, he had already run it by her and came to an agreement. So then he proposed it to me. I don't remember having any pushback to that, because I had kind of already figured out what I wanted to do. It was coding. It was something in technology. It was primarily something in business. So I kind of dabbled in some things. That's when I started the auto detailing business around a few neighborhoods. But when the big idea behind going homeschool was, how do you focus more of your attention on this thing that you wanted to do? So starting a business. So the real benefit behind homeschooling, and my mom didn't do the homeschooling. Everything was through online. Okay. So these courses, or these like major colleges like Stanford or Harvard, they would all put their courses online for free, and you just create an account and you can go access all of their content. There were also like online courses like through Khan Academy or like Coursera or Udemy or things like that, where I would go kind of do sciences and English and writing. But Texas is, I don't know if this is the case for other states, but they are super flexible in how you do homeschooling. So it could be your parent who homeschools you, or it could be doing it online like I did. But in addition to that, all they provide to you is just a few categories of courses that you need to do. So like they would say you need to do some like writing courses, or you need to do English, you need to do some math, you need to do some science. But they let you pick what those things are. So ultimately, my whole curriculum was developed around business. So for my writing course, it was copywriting and sales writing. For science, it was astronomy, because that was the thing I was interested in. For math, it was going to be accounting. It was like bookkeeping. It was the thing that I needed for business. So that is where the homeschool thing was really interesting, is I could just focus a few hours a day on the schoolwork that I needed to get done, and it was beneficial to the business, but also it freed up a huge amount of the day for me to go actually work on the businesses. So homeschooling, while it was never a plan, was I don't think I'd change anything about it.
That's awesome. So when you say coding, you're a freshman in high school. Walk us through what that means. Your audience you're talking to here is a bunch of rednecks guys running lawn care businesses. So coding ain't our world. What does that exactly mean, Riley?
Yeah. So I guess there's two parts of kind of what I was doing. After I was done with the auto detailing business, I got into building websites. So from a coding standpoint, that would be building the website, writing the copy, doing the SEO, like building the back end of the website to make it look good. And then, that was fairly basic compared to what I'm doing today. Nowadays, it's nowadays it's a lot more technical. So with every chat, it's writing the back end to like handle, okay, when do we send automated texts? How do we integrate with like Gmail or like Facebook Messenger, like things like that, building the back end of every chat to make it function how it is. But then also I've also had to learn about like, how do you manage databases, and how do you manage like these hosting services like Amazon Web Services to actually host every chat on the web. So coding just kind of, it's a broad term to touch on a bunch of different stuff, but I don't have to get into the nitty gritty of like the languages that I use and all of that. It's just coding from a standpoint of building websites for lawn care, cleaning companies like that, and then developing every chat. Because up until this point, I had been building every chat on my own, but fortunately I now have a few developers to help me. That's made things a lot easier.
Okay. So walk us through the story of graduating, homeschooling, high schooling, and now you're doing every chat. What was in the middle there? When did you go full time with building this every chat? And for those of you who don't know, Riley, you still live with your parents.
Yep.
So you got lower responsibilities than if we're out there. Do you have a girlfriend now, the Florida girl? Your dad was telling me you met a girl in Florida.
Not in Florida. Well, frankly, there's no girlfriend at all right now. I wonder where the Florida girl came from.
We went out. So the night we podcasted, we went out to dinner. You would probably know the place. There's a bunch of like picnic tables out there, and you can eat outside.
Uh-huh.
I don't know the name of the place.
The Yard? Is that what
The
it's
Yard?
called?
Yeah, the Yard.
Yeah.
It was really good. But your dad said something along the lines of, "Yeah, Riley just got back. I think it was from Florida, and he started talking about a girl, and that's like as much as I remember."
I'm gonna have to ask him about that. I don't know where that came
Florida,
from.
or where did you go? You were out of state with some buddies. Or was that your other brother?
It could have been my other brother. I mean, I went to Florida for Mike Callahan's event to go speak there. But there was no girl involved there, at least from what they know of. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask him about that. I don't know.
Don't get me in trouble now, but I remember him saying something about Riley's talking about a girl now.
I'm gonna throw you under the bus. Yeah, I actually I don't know where that.
So no girl.
No girl. No, it's all business right now for the most part. So I mean, to answer your earlier question, to pivot from this girl conversation. So as far as the graduation went, there was, I mean, so every chat has gone through several different iterations. Part of where every chat started, it started as a little product called Schedule Talk. And that came from a little school project that I was doing to basically copy Calendly. For those of the people who know, like that little scheduling, or it's not little anymore, but it's a scheduling tool where you can just send a link to somebody and they can book a meeting because it integrates with your calendar and it knows like when you're available, when you're not. So that little project was originally called Schedule Talk. And that was something I was doing while I was still in school to learn coding, to learn how to build these features, to publish something to Amazon Web Services and to connect a database. Like it was just this project. And eventually I went out and tried to sell it. Granted, it failed. I basically blew all of my money on that project. Rightfully so, because it was a terrible product. It was a terrible knockoff to Calendly, to somebody who's invested years and years trying to develop a really good software. And it was me just learning how to code who tried to go knock off their product and then sell it to people. Didn't work out. So then, that's, I kind of, once I ran out of money, that's when I was like, by this point, I'm kind of done with school. It took me, I went homeschool in 9th grade. And then that's when I started doing the homeschool stuff, doing the development. And then from there, once I had tried to do this Schedule Talk thing, didn't work out. I was out of money. That's when I started building websites for companies. And that did very well. That's what I had been doing for the last 4 years, trying to build up some amount of income so that when I came back to Schedule Talk, or what's called now Every Chat, I could really invest all of my time into it. So I don't do so much website stuff anymore. My time is fully focused on every chat. But that has even then still gone through several iterations, mostly based on feedback. It started based on feedback from the website business. Because I would build these websites, I would go out and I would do some consulting to figure out how do we get this website out on Google? How do we do the marketing? How do we bring leads in? And then from there, the conversation evolved to, okay, how do we close these leads? How do we get more people reaching out to us? How do we get more upsells running through the business? So what's that next step? So that's where Every Chat came from. I built, I guess it was still called Schedule Talk at the time. That became a text marketing tool. So we would go integrate with your phone number. We would set it up so you can go plug those texting onto your website. You can do bulk texting. You could do a bunch of different stuff. And that was ultimately the first step of what Every Chat is today. Then as I was working with more and more people on that product, that's when it evolved into the Every Chat it is today, which isn't just the text marketing side, but it's also, it's evolved into a communication tool, because the biggest point of feedback that I got from that product was, well, now it's one additional thing. And I felt like this was the biggest pushback on implementing texting in a significant way, was a lot of these different tools, they would just do texting and they wouldn't integrate with any other products on the market. So what ultimately happened is the number one piece of feedback that I got was, it's this one additional thing. So ultimately it would turn out to, people would kind of plug it into their service autopilot automations, and we would basically at the bottom of their text say, please don't text us back. And it would just totally defeat the purpose of texting. So that's where I developed Every Chat, what it is today, where we would pull in their Gmail, or basically their emails, their Facebook messages, their to-dos, their website chat message. It's just become this full communication platform. And that's the product that's really taken off, because it's not just a text marketing platform anymore. It's, these companies can get their team in the product and then kind of run everything, all their communication from Every Chat. So that's kind of been, since school, Every Chat's gone through these different iterations, and I've kind of transitioned away from websites, which I've been doing for the last 4-ish years. It's kind of just gone from a project that was from school to the website stuff, which was actually meant to try and make some money, then to Every Chat based on a bunch of different feedback, working with several dozen companies to eventually what it is today. And that's basically what I do full time now. I'm done with school, of course.
Okay. And then Every Chat that integrates with like a Jobber and a service autopilot. Obviously you mentioned that. The kind of main CRMs that my audience uses is Jobber and service autopilot and Element. And, there's a handful of them, but how does that work with a CRM?
Yeah. So through something like Jobber, they are super easy to integrate with, because, you can go, they're basically an open API. They allow us to easily integrate with them through a product called Zapier. And we can just plug the two products together. They will send us contacts when they're creating Jobber. We'll send them contacts back when they're creating Every Chat. And then based on the events that they have in that product called Zapier, we can do automated texting. We can do a bunch of stuff. Service Autopilot was a bit more complicated, because they are very closed off. But fortunately, in the last 4 months, I was able to get, not working with their development team, but I was able to create a workaround to integrate with their solution. And the biggest issue that people had been running into, part of the reason why I developed this integration, was everybody was talking about how you had to get the opt-in before you went and texted somebody through Service Autopilot. And that just, working with, different automation consultants like a Simple Growth or a Ready Business Systems, and then, building your own automations, it just became really difficult, because texting has been the most successful feature in Every Chat, simply because it's been made communicating with customers, with leads, people communicating with you so much easier. So the amount of follow-ups you had to do to make before you closed a sale reduced. So our ability to go integrate with Service Autopilot and plug in Every Chat texting into these automations, so you don't have to get the opt-in first, so we can sync your contacts with Service Autopilot. Different integrations require different things. Service Autopilot has been the most difficult, but something like Jobber or some of these other green industry CRMs, they're a little bit easier because they're open and every chat can just like sync up with them and connect pretty easily.
I'm looking at your website here. Very nice. I'm going to see if I can share it. 1 second here. Share screen. Let me know if you can see my screen here, Riley.
Yep. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. Let me make it a little bit bigger. You can see it full screen now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I was reading this right here. With texting, it closes more sales. And I definitely agree with that, just from my perspective. Generate leads, close sales. So how does this exactly work? Let's say somebody owns a lawn care business in Florida here. How do they use every chat?
Yeah. And I think integration is going to be the biggest point of this. So the phone system that they're running in the business, we can most likely integrate with them. So you don't have to get this new number that none of your customers recognize. So if you're using a phone system like Ring Central or Lawn Phone or Dial Pad, or there's a bunch of other companies we integrate with as well, we can go connect to that number. We can set, create an account, and then you can do, depending on the CRMs that you're using, we can go plug this in and do, lead follow-ups. We can send your estimates. We can do all of these things that previously would have been done by email. And very simply, the biggest benefit of this texting this texting feature is like, how do you reach those people that you're communicating with faster? Because with email, it's so easy to run into a situation where you're sending this estimate to somebody, you're following up with them, and you're just not getting a response back. And a lot of that just comes down to how often is a homeowner looking at their email throughout the day to actually see your email when you follow up with them or send them the estimate. So, what we've ultimately worked on quite significantly is like, how do we built every chat so you can bring your team in, you can connect your existing number, you can connect to those CRMs that you're using in the business, and then, implementing certain features to where when a lead comes in the door, you can text them directly from every chat, send them that estimate. So you're not having to follow up with them 5 times before they finally see that estimate, and then you have to follow up with them after that. It gets straight to their phone, which if any, everybody texts, everybody knows how convenient texting is. Us being business owners, we're on our emails all the time. So it's kind of hard to envision what maybe the average homeowner may be doing when they're outside of work, because, us as business owners, everything revolves around our business. So it's easy to be on our email 24/7. But the average person, like most of them, when they get home, they log off of their email, they're done, they're texting, they're on social media, whatever. So when you send them an estimate during the day, and it takes them several hours to finally see that estimate, by the time that they log into their email, that estimate has been buried by a bunch of different emails that have been sent through or received from other services, different products, different companies, whatever. And suddenly your estimate's down at the bottom of their inbox. So as far as setup goes in every chat, it's like most of the time it takes us about 30 minutes to set up. We connect your number, and then we can go connect it to those CRMs. And then from there, you do all of your texting with your team from that system, from the number that you've always been using. And then you can do a bunch of other stuff, which we can get into, connecting your emails, like building an actual system that, really you don't have to bounce between other products to see when people are reaching out to you. It's all in every chat. Your emails, your text, your Facebook messages, your to-dos, reviews here soon, team communication. There's a bunch of different stuff. And my goal with every chat is to be like the primary communication channel for the business, where you really only run things from 2 different products. You have a product like Service Autopilot or Jobber doing the routing, the scheduling, the invoicing. And then you have every chat doing all of the communication and team collaboration, trying to make sure everybody knows what they need to do during the day. So that was a long-winded answer to your question. Like, the main thing revolves around integrations and just plugging in that number so you can get started quickly.
Okay. And then is it more for communicating with the customer or internally amongst team members, or does it do both?
Right now, it is primarily around communicating with the customer in the lead. But here at the end of the month, we are launching a feature called Team Chat, and that's going to be internal communication between the people in the office, but also a feature to go communicate with the guys out in the field. So, doing broadcast channels to go communicate updates to the team, uploading documents and training resources to those channels. So if one of your team members out in the field has a question about like what's the chemical application schedule, or like how do we treat these certain things, they can just go into the channel, pull up one of those videos or those training documents, reference it, and then get back to what they need. That's what's going to ultimately open up the door to AI, to where your team out in the field can just ask a channel to that bot that's been trained on your training resources, and then that bot can give them an answer. So right now it's mainly customer and lead, but team communication is going to be at the end of the month.
Okay. And then let me ask you this. Let's say Mrs. Smith requests a quote from, ABC Lawn Care. How does that then trigger Mrs. Smith getting a text message later that day with, the rate to mow, edge, and trim and blow your yard is, $75 per week? How does that all work?
Yeah. So it kind of depends on the system. So Service Autopilot, we would just set up an automation to say, okay, when the form is submitted, send them an automated text. It wouldn't like include the pricing in that text. What we're ultimately trying to do with the text is say, hey, we saw your message, and then we're going to go connect them with the right person. And then from there, you can use automations inside the product to ask them questions. By that point, you already have an idea of who they are, what they need. But then we can go, assign a team member to that conversation to let them know, hey, you need to go provide an estimate to this person. Hey, you need to give them a call. For something like Jobber, we would go in, set it up through Zapier to whenever a form submission is completed, and we would do that same automated text and assign the right person to the conversation so they know what to do next.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, it is like different products will do different things. The really nice thing, like for example, like Service Autopilot, we aren't really tapping into those price matrices to know pricing and all of that. So if you are sending text through, again, something like automations, we can often pull that data. So for example, a bunch of people send estimates. So we can pull that data from Service Autopilot and send them a link to the estimate directly from text automatically. So just depending on the system that you're using, we can do a variety of different things. It just kind of, it requires us to kind of maybe hop on a Zoom call, set everything up. Well, I work with pretty much everybody who goes through the system and just set up some of these automation pieces to help, send an automated text to a lead, follow up with that lead. And then, from there, you can do upsells from the system as well. That's been a fairly significant part of the product. So I think ultimately the answer just comes down to, depending on the system that you're using, we can set up all kinds of different automations to from a lead or a customer standpoint.
And who are your current customers, and how did you onboard them? And do you have any success stories of someone who's using this?
Yeah. So most of the company, or other than a handful, the majority of the companies using EveryChat are from the green industry. So it's predominantly people in the lawn care, landscaping world. There's some pest control, there's some house cleaning. And as far as, the companies who use EveryChat, it's very much across the board. Generally, you see the type of company, the company who joins EveryChat, they're going to have at least one person in the office, because those are going to be the companies where we also plug in all of their different inboxes, and they have somebody in the office managing the inbox. So you set it up to where everything just goes through EveryChat, and you really don't have to go check your email or Facebook when something comes through. As far as the size of the companies, we have a few $8 to $10 million companies using EveryChat. They're going to be at the top end of the product, using almost everything, primarily from an internal communication standpoint. Is like when a new conversation comes through, hey, we need to assign this to the right CSR in the system, so everybody kind of knows what they need to do. They use to-dos and Sometimes we can create automatic tickets in Service Autopilot. But as far as success story goes, we've had a lot, most of the marketing and sales success we've had has come from text messaging. And we've done a variety of different things. We've done, sending a bulk review invitation, running basically a giveaway. There are different points to kind of say whether or not Google appreciates that. But it was super successful from a standpoint of that company generated, I think it was about 30-ish reviews in a week.
Wow.
Campaign. It was incredibly successful.
What did Google freeze the account, or what did Google do? Because that seems like it could be fraud or something.
Yeah, so we didn't have any issues with that. Now, if we continued doing that, I would probably, I think the business owner would agree. This is not something you do every week. This is something you do every once in a while, but we didn't have any issues with Google freezing the account. But I've definitely heard stories where you want to be a little bit careful with that, to your point. So ultimately, we do less of the bulk texting from a review generation standpoint, and we use it more plugging it into an automation inside of Jobber or Service Autopilot, to where whenever the job completes, we will send them the customer an automated text with the link to their Google or Facebook page saying, hey, really appreciate your business. It would really be helpful to us if you left us a review, that kind of text.
Wow.
Those have done very well in just generating reviews on a regular schedule rather than everything
genius
all at once.
So once you have the automation set up, you complete, and I personally use Jobber, Riley, so I'm familiar with Jobber, but you finish the job, Jobber knows your job's complete, then you don't do anything. The automation can read that information that the job's complete, and it's going to text Mrs. Smith the Google business profile link to drop the Google review.
Exactly.
Masterpiece. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And that feature will get better by the end of the month, but because what we're ultimately going to develop here is a system that can understand when Jobber sends us a request or Service Autopilot sends a request, we will know if that customer has already left a review. And if they have, then we will either stop that text from going through, or instead we'll send them a feed, like an NPS survey, to kind of get an idea. Okay, how did we do that time around? And we'll know the tech that was doing that, or the guy who went to that property and performed the service. We'll be able to attribute the team member and the customer, and then from there, depending on where the feature goes, maybe tipping's not really part of the plan just yet, but maybe at some point you could send some kind of like Venmo link or PayPal link where you can leave a tip, and then that tip is assigned to one of the team members. Like, we can do a bunch of different attribution through that feature to know who left the review, who was part of that job, and then we can leave the positivity ratings on that team member's account so you know how they're doing
so good.
out on customers' properties.
That's really exciting. So how did you recruit these customers that are the $8 to $10 million lawn care business? How did you get in front of them and be like, hey, you guys need EveryChat? How did you market yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so there's been a few different ways. Like, honestly, because EveryChat's so small right now, I go reach out to a lot of people individually and go have conversations with them to see, okay, where are the pain points in the business? Could something like EveryChat help you? And many of those conversations have just naturally grown into, we're going to use the system. So that's where a few of those larger companies came from. But also, since this Service Autopilot integration, in specifically solving hey, we have to get an opt-in to text everybody, or to text anybody in our system, and that's killed a lot of the capabilities to use texting and Service Autopilot from a lot of different companies. So that feature right there has brought on a lot of different, especially larger companies, because they've seen their conversion rate drop since everything is switched back to email. The number of follow-ups they've had to send has grown. The number of estimates that have been approved has grown. The number of follow-ups that you have to send to get an estimate approved has grown. So EveryChat has kind of slipped itself in nicely into that part of the industry as far as the Service Autopilot user base goes, to where it solved a pretty current problem. So right now it's kind of split between the Service Autopilot feature and then also just going to reach out and having conversations with people to get a better understanding of where their business currently stands. And many of those conversations just start out as, what features should I build for every chat? Just kind of getting an idea of both sides of the market. So every chat's not just built for one size. It kind of works for both. That's been the biggest challenge that I've tried to work through, is not building something so complicated where the small guys can't use it, but also not building something so simple to where it's not effective enough for the big guys. So it's been this balance of trying to do a bunch of meetings with a bunch of different types of companies to understand what features does every chat need to really fit perfectly in the market.
And then who is your ideal customer? Is it the small company, medium company, big company? Who ideally do you want every chat user to be?
Yeah, generally the best metric that I know, as far as like who's going to really find value out of every chat, is going to be the company who has at least one person in the office. The companies who are still operating from a cell phone, and they're running around in the truck, still, like, they're on the smaller end of the spectrum while they're still growing the company. They have a little bit more of a challenge because we can't connect to that cell phone unless you port it to a full-on VoIP system. So it's generally the people using the product are a little bit more established. They've transitioned to a Ring Central, a lawn phone, a dial pad, a company like that. And then they have 1 to 8 people in the office all managing the phones and the inbox and dealing with messages. That's generally who uses every chat the most.
Okay. That's pretty cool, Riley.
Yeah.
I had a few questions for you about the website. I know that was in your rear view mirror, but a lot of my audience has the most raggedy looking websites you could think of. And what are some keys when you have a lawn care business that need to be on the website? Like, what makes a good website for a home service based business?
Yeah. I think honestly, when you have a lot of these conversations about the website, it's easy to get caught up in the look, in the overall design of the website. And while that's pretty important from setting the right first impression with somebody when they land on the website, and not, especially if like the website takes forever to load, or it's just like features are broken on the website, that sets a negative first impression. But the thing is, everybody talks about that. The thing that I would really focus on, as long as your website isn't like totally broken or something like that, I would really focus on what your ideal customer needs to make a buying decision. Because that's ultimately what the website needs to be geared around. Is if you're just on the website talking about, introducing, hey, we do this service, this service, this service, and maybe you have a little call us button on the website, you're going to have a really hard time getting leads in the door, because you don't set yourself apart from any of the other companies that they're evaluating. They're not just looking at you. They're probably looking at 3 other companies as well, trying to figure out like the right pricing, who does what I need them to do. It's just a whole a variety of things. So you have to put yourself in that customer's mind to understand, okay, what are the steps, or what are the to-dos, or the items on their list that they're trying to check off, to understand if I'm the right company for them. And honestly, that can be broken down in ultimately the sales strategy on the website can be broken down into 3 steps. It's first answering those questions. What does somebody need to know to make them, say, comfortable and confident in choosing you? So understanding, what services do you offer? Where do you provide those services? Then from a social proof standpoint, do other people really like what you're doing? Like, that's going to be the biggest part, is when somebody lands on your website and it simply just talks about the service, but there's no proof to saying that their neighbors like you, there's nobody else in the area that really likes you. It's hard for them to give you their credit card, or give you their email, their phone number, and eventually give you their credit card to say, yeah, I'll give you a chance. Because somebody doesn't want to hire a company only to discover, oh, I just hired a terrible company who does terrible work. So that's where social proof really comes into play. So it's answering the questions. What are those common things that people need? What sets you apart? What services do you offer? Where do you offer those services? And that'll help you with SEO as well. But then it's also proving to them that, you will be paying us money, but we can get the job done right. And here's some social proof behind that. So written testimonials. If you can get recorded videos of people, like customers in front of a camera, that is even better, because then you can use that on social media to push your services on maybe like remarketing campaigns and things like that. Is like somebody who's viewed your website but didn't buy. You can go run a Facebook ad to those individuals, that just showing them again, hey, it's XYZ Lawn Care Company. Here's another reason why you need to sign up with us, because your neighbor really enjoyed working with us and they love the final product on their property. The third part of this is making sure your call to action is not only simple but clear. So this kind of gets back to where Every Chat started. So almost everybody will say, call us on our website. Almost everybody will give you a form. And that is perfectly fine. Have those options on the website. But I also want to try, this is kind of the key to marketing and sales. Put yourself in that other person's shoes. And when you start thinking about what are they doing throughout their day? What are they doing when they're looking at your website? Are they on their computer? Are they on their phone? You begin to realize in more scenarios than not, they haven't carved out a huge chunk of their day to sit down and look for a company. It's like maybe if they're waiting on an appointment, or maybe that when they get home from work, they open up their phone, they go to your website and they do some quick research on companies near me. So when you think about that, they don't have forever to go hop on the phone and talk to your team. They may be running around. They may see your truck out running around. And these are instances where somebody may not be able to pick up the phone and call you at that very instant. They may not have time to talk with your team. They may be looking at your website after hours, and you may not even be open. So I highly recommend trying and split testing, seeing what call to action works for you. So not just having the call list on your website, but also letting people text you and say, hey, I'm interested in a free quote. And if you have the system that allows it, do something like text lawn to our phone number, to where it can kick off an automation. So it's not just a, hey, I'm interested text. It's a text that fires off an automation that will qualify that lead like a form would. So I think the three core concepts, if somebody's looking to improve their website, answer the questions that people have. Like, what are the questions that people commonly ask you on the phone? And it's going to be also establishing social proof with them, using pictures from past projects, using testimonials, using videos, establishing yourself as a credible company to work with. And then three, making it really easy for somebody to reach out to. I think those are the three core principles of any very good website. It's answering the things that people need and then making it really easy for somebody to reach out to you. Those are the 3 points that every website needs.
Very, very well said, Riley. If somebody wants to try Every Chat, do you guys have a free trial, or what's the way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so if you want to try Every Chat, the best way to do that is go to everychat.com. And if you want to see it before you make any commitment, book a demo with me. I'll hop on a Zoom with you and do a 30-minute to an hour meeting with you, depending on how much information you need. And then you can make your decision from there. Or if you want to just jump right into it, we do have the free trial, like you mentioned. Jump in there, connect your phone number, see how it works. That's going to be the best way to try it out. And the really nice thing, because of how Every Chat's still relatively small, is I do onboarding with everybody going through the product. So we can set up the product in about 30 minutes, get it implemented, and then from there, you're ready to rock and roll and get this, actually use this thing in a significant way in the business. So definitely Every Chat's the best way to reach out to me about that. Or Facebook, I answer every Facebook message that I get. So that's another way to contact me if you have questions.
Again, that's Every Chat. Oh, my camera's got a mind of its own here. I got the camera that follows you around. So one time I was on, you see that? So excuse the mess. I'm moving on Tuesday. I'm moving Tuesday. So I'm got everything packing up and getting ready to move out of here. But anyway, the camera followed me into the bathroom, and I was on a meeting with all these people. So thankfully I shut the door, but camera will just follow you around. I had a few more questions if you got a few more minutes, Riley. Yep. What's a day in the life of? Because you and your dad stay up late. When I came to Texas, we get done podcasting. It's dark. I'm so exhausted. It's like, I can't wait to go back to the hotel. And JP's like, oh, you guys want to go grab some bite to eat or whatever? And I'm like, I want to go to bed. It's 10:15. And they're like, yeah, let's go. And so you guys stay up late in your family. What time do you wake up? Do you go to the gym? What's a day in the life of?
Yeah. I feel like it's now 7:00 here. I feel like my day's, well, maybe not tonight, but generally my day is just getting started at 7. I usually wrap up my day around 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
There are reasons behind that, not because I generally like to do it. And I suppose you could make this same argument for waking up early in the morning versus staying up super late. It's just easier for me to stay up late. It requires a little bit less discipline than waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning, where I wake up and I am just totally wiped out and I have to just muscle through it. So, generally my days look like get up around 9 and then work till 3. And during the day is mostly filled with meetings. I think my schedule is very similar to my dad's schedule when he was still really in the thick of service autopilot, where during the day would be all meetings, but then because you had meetings throughout the day, you would then need to make up all the actual projects and things that you needed to get done at night. So that's when I would do all of like the marketing preparation for the business, all of like the building, helping my developers and plan out new features that are coming to the product. So, much of my day is very opposite from a lot of the people that I talk to. It's like a lot of people are early morning. I tend to stay up until like maybe a few hours within the time that they're getting up to ready to start their day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's very opposite to a lot of people, but generally my days end at around 2 or 3 in the morning, and it's just packed with work throughout the day.
And do you play any golf? Because I remember when your dad picked me up, there's golf clubs in the trunk, and I doubt it was Tiffany's clubs. Was that yours or? They're
mine. I try and play golf. I'm getting a little bit better, but mostly, I like to think golf is this way for me to get away from work a little bit and like relax. It never ends up that way. I'm usually sending my ball off into the other neighborhood, and then I'm frustrated, and I usually come back from golf more frustrated than how I went into golf. So I try and play golf, but it's never a very good game.
Okay. What course do you play over there?
We have a few. We have a course called Waters Creek. That's about 15 minutes for me. And then you have a few others in Plano and then in McKinney. There's a bunch of them all kind of scattered around, but Waters Creek is the one that I generally play at.
Where does Good? Do you know who Good is on YouTube?
Yeah. I know them.
They're based out of Metro Dallas. It looks like. What course do they play out of?
I think they're all over. I know I've not personally seen them, but I've seen several of their videos at Waters Creek. But then also in Frisco, they just opened up a PGA course. I'm never going to go there. That is like, I think it's like $300 for a tee time or something. It could be more. I don't remember. That's too much for me in my terrible game of golf. I think they play there every once in a while. But yeah, I've seen them all over. I think they just play a bunch of courses here locally.
Yeah, they're Dallas boys though. So their brand Good is really growing and making golf cool. Pretty unique story that they have.
I mean, there's a little bit of an element of like they kind of got me into golf. I haven't played golf for long, but I did get into their videos, and then I thought, oh, I'll try it. And then from there, I've played a little bit. So I think they are partially to, for lack of a better word, partially to blame for me getting into golf and starting this hobby. Well, semi hobby. I don't play it frequently. Part of the problem that I have.
That's intriguing to me. I just started a golf YouTube channel. I actually your dad and I had dinner when I was in Grapevine, Dallas. I don't know all the terms. I was in the area. And I was telling your dad, I was like, golf is blowing up on social media. Like these content creators are more popular than the professional golfers. He's like, you got to go all in on the golf industry. It's a booming industry. And so I started a golf channel in November. I got 22 subs. No,
Nice.
23. I picked up a new subscriber day. So I'm
Let's
at
go.
23 subscribers on that. And then I started a Paul Jameson Golf Shorts. That channel's got 16 subscribers. So we're in the infancy here compared to Good. But I just go out and film myself playing golf, and it's a fun sport.
How often do you get out there?
Well, I have a cameraman, Josiah. He's available on Mondays.
Mm-hmm.
So every Monday we go out and he films me. So I play at least once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's actually not feeling well, so I don't think he's going to go with me tomorrow. And then I have a business. I have a friend who's very successful in business. That's a member at these very nice country clubs. So he's got a membership at one country club, but then you can play this other course. So he can play 2 really nice courses. So whenever he invites me, I go out there, and he's very, very successful, and the courses are, similar to that PGA course you're talking about. It's real fancy. So I last week we played twice. He invited me on Tuesday and Wednesday. We went out there, and it was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I felt like there was this whole stigma behind golf is like, oh, it's boring to watch. It's super slow paced. But like, to your point, I don't know when things really started taking off, but I'm gonna forget his name. He is a professional golfer, but now he's got a significant YouTube channel.
Bryson DeChambeau, he's from Grapevine.
Okay, I think that's who he was. Doing a hole-in-one challenge over his house or something.
Yeah, that's down in Grapevine. Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah, I mean, the views that these guys get from golf, from a sport that previously would have just kind of been written off as boring, is pretty incredible. So yeah, I think you're really getting started in the thick of it here. It's like a lot, like you said, it's like everybody seems to be funneling into golf for whatever the reason that is. Maybe the sport's getting even more popular. It's just like now I consume golf content. I would have never said that in the past. Wow. So yeah, this seems like a fantastic time to start that channel.
Yeah, and the brands that, if you watch like a golf tournament, I mean, it's brought to you by IBM, by Rolex, by Mercedes, and I mean, it's a lot of the bigger money companies. Because like you said, it's $300 to go golf that course, and you obviously need to have some kind of success to have the time availability, and then not all courses are $300. That might be $75, but it's an expensive sport. You got to buy the clubs. You're in all kind of expensive sports. Skiing's expensive, car racing expensive. Soccer, that was the low budget sport there when you were in soccer.
Yeah, I've really made at least from a long-term standpoint, I've ended up in the most unfortunate hobbies. Even though I love them, they are the most expensive to do. So I don't know how that's happened. Maybe I have expensive taste in hobbies, but it's really unfortunate from my bank account's perspective, where this stuff can easily consume all of the money in your bank account, especially with some of the car stuff that I dealt with. I have an older car, and that thing's been nonstop in the shop. So yes, unfortunate hobbies that I've discovered that I really appreciate.
And walk us again. And when you were in Colorado and you saw, I don't know what kind of house you saw or what kind of car you saw, but something switched there. Walk us through that moment and how that's carried with you today.
Yeah. So it wasn't just like one house or one car. Frankly, we had done ski trips in the past where, it would have been similar scenery, maybe not to Vail, but maybe to Telluride or Crested Butte or some of these other places. But just something about when we were flying into, I guess maybe it was Vail Airport. I forget exactly, but when the airport that we were flying into, when you look out, I was on the left side of the plane, so I was looking out the window. And as we were landing in this airport, you would come down and you would see, I mean, knowing ski village homes and their prices, these could very well have been $10, $15 million homes on the mountain. So me as a soccer, what would have been a competitive soccer player back then, I don't think I really ever had it to truly go professional. But me being in the, call it profession or sport that I was in the average, say, FC Dallas soccer player, at least at the time looking at it, made $40,000 to $60,000 a year. That was totally unattainable. the $10 or $15 million home on the mountain, there was something that just switched where I was like, how do I get that? So it was a combination of seeing the homes, driving through Vail, and every once in a while you'll see like a Ferrari 458 or one of these other like sports cars. Maybe there were a few Porsches throughout. It was just a combination of the scenery, the homes around, that maybe I had already started like lightly thinking about, what am I going to do in the future? Or, at some point later in my soccer career, we'll call it, I was getting a little bit more frustrated because I had broken off from the team with all of my friends on it to a far more competitive soccer team, which didn't really have the friends that I had on them. It was far more competitive and strict. So, during that time, I had kind of fallen out of love in general for the sport. It was kind of a hard time going through that team. So going through Vail, kind of already having a little bit of a thought process, like, what do I want to do next? That kind of flipped the switch to where I was like, okay, how do I get this? So really that entire trip just turned into, of course, snowboarding, but my dad and I talking about, okay, well, how do you find the thing that you enjoy doing? How that's going to be the next question here. So that's what ultimately turned into me trying a bunch of different stuff, me being going out and doing the auto detailing business, going to build websites or do some of the software stuff, like starting out as just trying to build a knockoff to Calendly. That trip truly became not necessarily a planning trip, but in many ways a brainstorming for like, what do I want to do and how do I find that thing? And it just came from trying a bunch of different stuff and figuring out what do I enjoy. And it happened that, software development became that thing. So yeah, it truly, thinking back on it, I can't think of anything that like led up to that point that made me at least start thinking about it, other than I was kind of falling out of love with soccer. But it was just, maybe the combination of a bunch of different things, where flying into that airport, seeing the $10 or $15 million homes on the mountain, thinking about, okay, well, I want to do these trips too when I grow up. I want to go snowboarding. I want to go like maybe travel to different countries. I want these cool cars. It was like a bunch of like, okay, the situation that I'm in now is not going to work out. Mm-hmm. So what do I need to do? What do I enjoy enough to go try something new and go find the thing that can get me to that point? That's very much what happened. It was just seeing those homes, discovering that there's something more out there than just soccer, and then just go trying a bunch of stuff to figure out what I enjoyed doing.
So good. Well, it's been fun chatting with you. Riley, my routine here on Sunday evenings, I make a few phone calls to family members that are older, mm-hmm. and they go to bed at 9. So I gotta make my calls here for to the family, and you're just warming up your day. But then I go to bed at 9, so I'm not on the Pototschnik stay up late. Man, I couldn't believe we went out to dinner. It was like 10. It was so late. That place was good. The Yard, though.
Oh, I love that restaurant. It's a good place.
Yeah, your dad ordered a whole bunch of appetizers. I forget what all, but I think I gained like 7 pounds when I was in Texas.
Texas will do that to you. That's for sure. That's that whole motto. Everything's bigger in Texas. The serving sizes are bigger in Texas.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time. Well, tell JP I said hello. And what's he been up to?
5 for 50.
Oh yeah.
5 for 50, recording all the content for that channel, recording more content since much of it had been scheduled already. He's working on the City Turf marketing strategy and branding strategy right now. So there's a lot going into that. So City Turf and 5 for 50 are the things that he is putting a lot of effort into right now.
Yeah, it's good to have him back in the game and dusting off the cobwebs and getting back to work. He took a few years off there.
He is certainly happy to be back. That's for sure. He was getting to that point where it's like, oh man, I'm ready to do something. And him enjoying marketing, this has kind of been right up his alley. He gets to focus on the marketing, the content creation. He enjoyed doing Lawn Care Millionaire. So I think he's really happy to be back at it.
Yeah, and 5 for 50, they just crossed 1,000 subscribers, and it all compounds. So at some point, it will just take off. But that first 1,000, I know how difficult it is because I mean, I'm sitting here going from 22 subs to 23 subs, not 23,000, just 23. You know, and anyway, that's a nice accomplishment for him to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, and then in a blink of an eye, I'm sure he'll be at 10,000.
Yeah, I know he's gonna keep plugging along. He's always thinking like, how do I get to that next point? Like any business owner, how do you get back to that next point and break through that next threshold or the next goal? So he's continuing to record content, thinking about different elements of 5 for 50 and what that could look like in the future. I think he's really enjoyed this brainstorming process of, you know, getting 5 for 50 on the ground, thinking of all the different paths that it could take. He's definitely happy to be back in the game.
Cool. Well, tell him I said hello. And if you guys want to check out Every Chat, it is everychat.com. Again, that's everychat.com. And you can get on a Zoom call with Riley and learn more. Is there anything we're leaving out here that needs addressed?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of good points here. So I have nothing else to add.
All righty. Well, thank you for your time, and we'll definitely stay in touch. Thanks to my friend Andrew Martinez for kind of connecting us. I texted him today. Thank you. But he's been telling me about you for a while, and I think we met. Well, I obviously met when I came to your house, but we might have even met in Nashville. Didn't you go to the huge convention?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
yeah. Not recently. But you know, we may have crossed paths at one of these different conferences. I don't know if you were at a GIE when. I forget what year it is, but I had done a presentation at Mike Andy's events. And then I had gone to GIE right after that. And I went through Podcast Row, I forget what it was called. And so we may have crossed paths there.
Okay. Yeah. I think I remember meeting you briefly in Pod Row in Nashville at the huge convention. I met one of JP's sons. So it's probably you.
Yeah, Gage doesn't really attend any of these events. So
okay, yeah, so we met there briefly, and then we met when Naylor and I came over and almost took over your bedroom for our podcast studio. But that wouldn't have been the right decision. Outside, that was beautiful out there till it got dark. But hopefully we'll get to see each other again down the road. And thank you for your time. And I think we nailed it there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on. These are always fun to do. And I'll be at more events, so I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Cool. Let me